Yeah. Yeah. And it was hard. I mean, it was one of the hardest things I've ever experienced. He would drive down and send flowers and let's get back together. And I mean, there were times I couldn't see him because I knew if I physically saw him, I would melt. You know, there was, you know, so attracted to him. There was a lot of chemistry, and so I wouldn't open the door, but I just had this strength. That I just stuck to it, and then later, as the years went by, like I ran into some of his friends, and he had turned the whole story around, that I had broken up with him and I had broken his heart, and you know, of course, and then you know, I wasn't going to say, oh, but he punched me in the face,
right?
You know, so it was just.
And so here's what's interesting about that, because so many times, even now, we still protect
exactly
the perpetrator. And in this case, we're talking about men and women, right? So even now, there are times when we don't want to say names. We don't want to, you know, it's almost like we still don't want to tip the apple cart. And it's so crazy to me. That is so,
that's
like,
true.
so once we get comfortable with saying, first of all, let's just start with being comfortable saying this happened.
Right.
So I'd like to applaud you, first of all, for just stepping forward and saying that it actually happened.
Well, a lot of it has to do with listening to your shows. And when we talked about, when I said to you, I said, hey, Cheryl, if you ever want me to come on your show, let me know. And you were like, why would you? And I said, you know, and I told you the story, and you said, why have I known you all this time, like 30 years, and why am I just now hearing this? And part of it was until I started listening to your program and listening to the manipulation that so many women went through before it actually got physical. It wasn't until then that a light bulb went off, and I was like, oh wow, I was in a domestic abuse relationship.
Right.
Like, I wasn't allowing myself to identify with it,
and no blame, right? Because I feel like we're not talking about it. That's why we can identify it.
Right. And I didn't know you were going through it. But then after I did find out that you had gone through it, I felt like, oh, well, Cheryl's was so much worse, or April's was so much worse. I only got hit once, and so that doesn't count.
And I never got hit at all, and all of it counts.
Oh, I didn't know that.
No, it never was physical.
I did not know that.
Yes, it never was physical.
Oh my God, my mind is like blown right now.
Right. So so no matter how it happens, right?
Yeah.
There's an impact.
Yeah.
There's an impact. A lot of times there's a greater impact when it's emotional and mental, because of so many things you have to overcome in your mind.
Right. It's so intangible. It's so you can't like put your finger on it, and it's not, you know, it's not like anyone can see it, like a black eye. It's so hard. Yeah.
I can say that there were several times that I would have rather had a fight than to deal with what goes in my mind about not being able. So to me, if in an emotional or verbal, well, more emotional than verbal, because verbal is an outright exchange, and you know, right. Sometimes in an emotional abusive relationship, it's so under the radar that you feel like you're crazy. Yeah. And you feel crazier when you say something to someone and they say, girl, that ain't nothing.
Right.
That wasn't nothing, or whatever.
You're too
sensitive, or
you always take things the wrong way. And I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So listening to your program and the stories that other ladies have shared just really made me own it and just kind of process it and grieve it in a way that I don't think I ever did. I think like it happened and I put it in a box and moved on and never looked at it again. And only recently, 30 or 25, 30 years later, am I like, wow, that was a thing. Like,
That was pretty intense. Yeah.
and also, and kind of to your point,
years. But one thing I do know, if you decide to leave these circumstances, is that you will be alive.
Yeah. Yep. That's the key. That's the key.
And if you have ever been in a situation where you didn't know if you would be, life means so much more when you don't know you'll have it.
Hello, hello, hello. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another podcast of Another Woman's Story. My name is Cheryl Patton Dandridge. I'm the founder. And this month is especially significant because it is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And for our organization, we are having a podcast every Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. And so tonight is no different. Tonight we will have special guests like we always do, and we have a guest-packed evening, if you will. So just sit on the edge of your seats, pay attention to the information that we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about the power of no, but we're also going to be talking about narcissism. And narcissistic abuse is probably one of the most critical as it relates to domestic violence because it is a lot more of a psychological mix of emotional and mental abuse at its worst. And so I have a group of people tonight, friends of mine, that are going to share from different aspects of that. What I'd like to do first, though, as always, if you have a situation, if you're in a situation and you need help right away, as always, we want to make sure that we give you the number for the domestic violence hotline. That number is 800-799-SAFE. What I'd like for you to do, if you're tuned in right now, first of all, if you could just go ahead and let us know where you're calling from, where you're logged in from, shoot your comments in the comment box. We're going to be having live conversation. It's going to be real. It's going to be raw. And so I invite you all to share if you aren't already doing so. If you would just share this page, share from the YouTube channel, wherever you are logged in, if you would please go ahead and start filling in comments because we will be asking and answering questions in real time tonight. So let's get started. Our first guest is no stranger to our organization. She's no stranger to this month's podcast. Her name is Dr. Nicole, and she's going to start us out with a little bit of breathing and meditation. So with that, Dr. Nicole, come on in.
Hello, hello. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Cheryl. Always a pleasure. And so we will dive right in so that you all can get to these amazing guests that she has lined up for you. Okay, so I want you to just kind of allow your body to relax, get into a safe space. Of course, if you are driving, then don't relax too much. Don't close your eyes. But if you are not, find a place, even if that means like stealing away into the closet or into the bathroom. Won't be long, but just a place where you're safe and you can just be with you. Right? And tonight we're going to do a guided imagery on mental control. Right? And we know that the mind is powerful. We are powerful beyond measure. Sometimes we just have to tap into that and acknowledge that. And so we're going to go through a little exercise tonight. And so as you relax, Gently close your eyes, so allow that top lid to touch the bottom. Don't squeeze them closed. Relax the muscles in your forehead. Relax the muscles in your jaw, in your face, in your cheek. Sometimes you don't realize how much tension we hold there. So just relax those muscles. Take a few deep breaths. On every exhale, just kind of let your body relax, let those shoulders drop. Settle in to this moment. And as you begin, I want you to become aware of your breath. Okay? Start to notice what thoughts are going through your mind. Don't judge the thoughts. Just notice what they are. Okay? What are you thinking about? And try not to get caught up in the thoughts. Just begin to notice them as they travel across your mind. Let them go as they pass through, and watch them come and watch them go. Each thought. And continue to breathe deeply. In through your nose and out through your mouth. And as you breathe, I will just begin to describe settings for you. And I want you to allow your mind to jump immediately to those settings. Let your mind be free to travel. And don't become attached to any one setting or any image. Just think of yourself as a traveler jumping from place to place in your mind and enjoying the journey. Okay? And now we'll begin. So visualize an ocean. A deep blue ocean. And as you see the deep blue ocean, as you pan your eyes across, you see a beach with beautiful white sand. And it sparkles in the sunlight. With every breath, there's a fresh smell of the sea in the air. You hear the seagulls flying over the sand, calling out to one another in beautiful tones. And as you look in the distance, you even see the pelicans chasing the current over the waves. And the waves are crashing on the beach. The sand is white. You can feel it in between your toes. And with every wave, you feel your feet sinking down into the sand as the coolness of the water touches you. And then you go to the desert. And you're in this desert and you see a cactus in the desert. As you look up, you see a beautiful blue sky. I mean, it is gorgeous. Cloudless, blue, absolutely stunning in beauty. And in the distance, you hear birds singing. As they are perched atop a walled garden with lush green grass. Visualize storm clouds. Overcast, a cool breeze, and the crack of thunder. A dark sky illuminated by lightning. Huge raindrops hitting your skin. And then you see a long dirt road stretching toward the horizon. As you look to the left, you see a grove of olive trees and a farmer. You even see a woman pulling water from a well. The sun is warm, mountains are in the distance, and they're even topped with snow. And you're in a farmhouse, and there's also a stable with horses enclosed in the corral. And there's a beautiful orange sunset. And as the sun is setting, you see a flock of blackbirds in the sky. You hear the hoot of an owl. You hear the chirp of crickets. And just like that, you are on an old front porch with a swing. And on the table next to you, you have a glass of cold lemonade. It's refreshing. And then there's a warm chair next to a fireplace that is lit. There is a little gray cat curled on the rug. And there's an old woman sipping tea. And in the morning, you see her pruning a rose garden that's in full bloom. You see a robin perched in the tree with a worm in his beak and a hammock. white puffy clouds, a white dove, a burning candle, a flickering flame. Take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it here. And exhale out through the mouth. A deep breath in through your nose and hold it for a count of 3, 2, 1, and a long, complete exhale out through the mouth. Gently open your eyes. And grab a hold to the fact that your mind is powerful. And with every setting and every word, you were able to visualize what that looked like to you. And so anytime you feel as though you don't have power, remember that you do. I thank you all so much for having me this evening. I hope that was helpful and helped to relax you for the evening. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And Dr. Nicole has been here every week so far. We have one more week in our series for the month of podcasts. Again, this is for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And so this month we decided to increase our guests, increase the conversation, dig a little deeper in addition to sharing our stories. And so with that, we have a special portion tonight that I wanted to share. Again, another friend of mine who would like to share her version of the strength of a woman through song. And so with that, let's talk to Jeannine Bradley. Hello, hello, hello.
Hi. Am I good?
I think you're good. Yes. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure you can hear me. So whatever you want to say, go ahead and do your thing. I'm going to pull out.
Okay, awesome. Well, first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity. I do apologize for the glare and the shadow, but I am honored to be a part of this podcast and to experience women sharing their stories, because there are a lot of stories that do go unheard. I was abused by my dad, not by, someone I was dating or, in a relationship or anything like that. But I was really abused by my dad and nobody knew about it. So to be in a situation where people are talking about things that normally are not talked about, or being a part of an organization where people are free to heal, and it's okay to share your story, and it's okay to not be okay sometimes, because we don't always know the answers, we don't always know the why. But I know since I was a child, I've been able to not just express myself through music, but sometimes I only have a song, sometimes it's a song and a tears. And God has used that as a tool to help me in my healing process. And I'm not saying that I'm fully healed yet, but Cheryl, thank you so much for this platform. And I pray that this song is a blessing to those that are hearing. As she made her way to Jesus, she stumbles through the tears that made her blind. She felt such pain, some spoke in anger, heard folks whispering, there's no place here for her kind. Still on she came through the shame that flushed her face, till at last she knelt before his feet. And though she spoke no words, everything she said was heard, as she poured her love out for the master from her box of alabaster. I've come to pour my praise on him like oil from Mary's alabaster box. Don't be angry if I wash his feet with my tears, and if I dry them with my hair, with my hair. You weren't there the night he found me. You did not feel what I felt when he wrapped his loving arms around me. And you don't know the cost of the oil in my alabaster box. I can't forget the way life used to be. I was a prisoner to the sin that had me bound. I spent my days poured a life without measure into a little treasure box I found, until the day that Jesus came to me and healed my soul with the wonder of his touch. So now I'm giving back to him all the praise he's worthy of. I've been forgiven, and that's why I love you so much. I come to pour my praise on him like oil from Mary's alabaster box. Don't be angry if I wash his feet with my tears, and if I dry them with my hair, my hair. You weren't there the night my Jesus found me. You did not feel what I felt when he wrapped his loving arms around me. And you don't know the cost of the oil. Oh, you don't know the cost of my praise. You don't know the cost of the oil in my alabaster
Girl, woo, bring her back on. Bring her back on to the screen. Oh my God. Thank you so much. I'm going to try to keep it together, so I'm not going to. I appreciate you. I appreciate your ministry. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your gift with us. It's a blessing.
God is amazing. Thank you so much, Shay. Thank you.
You are so very welcome. Thank your husband. Tell him I said he can go to bed now. He's been the DJ and everything else, the light man. Tell him thank you so much. But I really appreciate you, Jeannine. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for everything.
Thank
you. Have a good night.
You
Bye-bye.
too.
Thanks. Oh, all right. So I had to grab a paper towel, not a tissue for this one. Anyway, tonight we're talking about the power of your no, the power of saying no, and the type of abuse that we're going to be discussing tonight is called narcissistic abuse. There are a lot of things that can contribute to a person being a narcissist. And so I wanted to just read a few things that I actually looked up myself so that I can show you some facts about narcissistic abuse. One of the things that I wanted to share, first of all, because people have a question all the time about how is it that a specific person is targeted, right? In any type of abuse. Why is it that there are certain people that seem to be magnets for people that abuse them? And there are some things that happen that they have no control over, right? You might just be targeted and someone is, looking at your personality type, or they're just a person that just feeds off of a person that they deem as weaker. However, initially, for some people, the initial belief system that you have about yourself or your self-worth begins with your childhood, right? So there's so many things, so many traumas that go back as far as childhood. There might be trauma that you've experienced that you didn't even realize, or you were so young you didn't know, or you may have forgotten or stuffed in the back of your mind. But the initial belief system that you have about yourself begins with your parents or your parenting icons, whoever those people were. And so if you suffered with regard to your initial belief system, it's called self-love deficit disorder. And what that means is, so one of the reasons why you would feel like you might be easy prey. So for example, if you have an overcritical parent, or if you had an overcritical parent, so let's say you want to do flips or whatever, your parent might say, that's about 90%, right? So you're always striving to do better, be better, and they never give you the gold star. They always give you one under the gold star. They might give you a silver, or they'll give you a bronze. And so you're always striving to do more. You're striving to be more. So one parent is overcritical. You never measure up. And so you're always striving for that. The other parent may be one that overgives. In other words, they've exceeded their gift in terms of they're always sacrificing their time, sacrificing their energy. When they're tired, they're giving and they don't have anything left, but they continue to give. And so that creates for you an image of continue to give even when you're depleted. Continue to give even when you don't have anything. Continue to give even when you're self-sacrificing. So those two imbalances can make you an easy target because you never measure up to the one parent, right? So you're looking for somebody that actually imitates the parents that you know, or the parenting style, or the environment that you were in. So that creates an image for you that you're not worthy, that you're not ready, that you're never good enough. And so your self-criticism, in addition to whatever your belief system is about yourself, can make you an easy prey for a person that's a narcissist. So we're talking about narcissism and the causes of narcissism, right? So a person that is a narcissist can have experienced childhood abuse or neglect, as you can see on your screen. So excessive parental pampering, right? They never did anything wrong. Unrealistic expectations, sexual promiscuity, those things often accompany narcissism. And those things generally show up teenage-ish. You start to see that type of behavior teenage-ish and beyond, right? So if we're talking about narcissistic personality disorder itself, it's really actually a mental condition in which people have an inflated sense of their own importance or a deep need for excessive attention. And so there are a lot of people who may have narcissistic traits, but there are specific things that will identify a person that is a narcissist. I'm just going to go through the list and we'll go ahead and bring the next set of guests on for tonight's show. So, signs of a narcissist. These are telltale signs for a narcissist. They have a grandiose sense of self-importance. They're better than in their mind, right? Their projection is that they are important. Wherever they go, wherever they land their feet, they, in their mind, they have a grandiose sense of self-importance. Number 2, they live in a fantasy world that supports their delusions of grandeur. So they feel like, the people they interact with, they still have this sense of themselves that they are better than. And these things, like I said, are telltale signs. So these are not like hit or miss. You definitely can receive, you get that feeling from a person that's a narcissist. Number 3, they need constant praise and admiration. What does that mean? Everything they do, they're looking for you to let them know how wonderful they are. It's constant. It does not let up. They're like this all the time. So there's not really a downtime with a person that's a narcissist. It's really pretty clear that they're that way. And it can be misconstrued as a person that's confident, but there's a level of confidence that they have when they get the praise and admiration that if you're really paying attention, it's a telltale sign. Number 4, this person has a sense of entitlement. They should be first. They should be in VIP section. They should get, whatever these things are because they belong to them. So everything is theirs pretty much. Number 5 is they are exploiting others without guilt or shame. What does that mean? That means that if there are things that are embarrassing to you, if there are things that you might be ashamed of, they have no problem sharing those things in front of others, sharing those things when you really need them to be compassionate or empathetic. They have no problem sharing what you share to them, even if it's a private matter, in front of others or in your face to bring it back up as a form of punishment. And then finally, number 6. Number 6 is they frequently demean, intimidate, bully, or belittle others. Now, this a lot of times happens when they are told no, or when you challenge them, or when you disagree with them, or if they feel threatened. And they can feel threatened if you hesitate to answer the question in front of others, or anytime they feel like they're not getting their way. They will demean or intimidate or bully or belittle. And they also have the tendency to give you the silent treatment, right? So you might try to ask them, well, why aren't you talking to me? And they'll just sit there like they didn't hear you. They'll just act like that you don't exist, basically. So until they feel like you're ready or they feel like you're worthy for a response, that's when they'll respond to you. And so I wanted to kind of share those things. I really would like for you guys to chime in. If you have any questions as it relates to narcissism, let's talk about it, because these signs a lot of times go unnoticed, or they go where we make excuses for, we rationalize that type of behavior. We go back to that person because we want to give them the benefit of the doubt. So the last question that I would like to ask you, can a narcissist change? That's a tough one. If I were to give you, if I have to say yes or no, the answer is generally no. The problem is that They don't see themselves as the person at fault. Excuse me. They don't see themselves as the person at fault. So generally, they're not open to change. They're very resistant, as a matter of fact, to change. So the true question that you need to ask yourself is whether or not you can live like this with that person indefinitely. And so the question that I would ask is, if they don't change, if they don't get better, but they don't get worse, can you do that for life? Because it's your life that's in the balance here. And it's your decision when it comes to saying no. It's your decision when it comes to living your life in a free way. Right? I'm going to stop there. I'm going to bring on our next guest or guests. They are a couple, Kenyon and Taccara, friends of mine, and they have gone through a few things individually and together. They have a special bond that has allowed them to create a platform to talk about things like this. And so right now, I'd like to bring them on. And hi.
Hello.
Kenyon and Taccara. I'm going to let you talk a little bit. I'm going to stay on screen, but I'm going to let you go ahead and share a little bit. Actually, no, let's pull me off the screen if you guys want to share just a little bit, and then I'll come back on. So let's just
You don't want to ask the questions? No, you just want to just like just
I can ask the questions. Okay, I can ask the questions.
like just I'm like I don't want to be like blah blah blah. First of all, when I was a baby, and then
right. Okay, so let's talk about that. Then first of all, I want to thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing your time and your stories. And so just to give you guys a little bit of a backdrop, I know that you've both experienced some form of trauma, but we're talking primarily to women. So if you don't mind, Kenyon, I'm going to talk to Taccara a little bit, and then you just chime in when it's time. But Taccara, if you could just share a little bit about when you experienced abuse or how that came to be, if you don't mind sharing your experience with regard to abuse period, but especially narcissistic abuse, if you want to just focus in on that.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it does start back from childhood, because I've shared this a lot, both on our podcast as well as, in other venues, that I think the cycle of abuse starts with being groomed for abuse.
Okay.
And for me personally, I grew up in a very strict church Pentecostal household where the church leader was the end all and be all to God's voice. And we had to do what they said. And it was always about submission and obedience to them, not necessarily to God. And there was a lot of shame that went on in everything that happened in our lives that made us feel like we were always seeking the approval of church leaders, not our parents, not even God. It was like always chasing that approval and chasing that love and acceptance. And so we weren't raised to, necessarily go to college, get an education, I'm Nigerian. So technically I should have been, going to school to be a doctor or a lawyer. But for them, it was like to get up and go and get married, get a husband, be a good wife. Here's how you clean the house. Here's how you serve your husband. Here's how you do all that stuff. And so my life literally as a child began on learning how to please and submit to a man. It was never to have a voice of my own.
Okay, so stop. So Sorry, I'm going to interrupt just because. So when you talked about chasing for attention or affection or approval, these are based on roles. As a woman should be, as a wife should be. It wasn't, it was gender specific, or it sounds like, was it gender specific, meaning?
No, it was every type of relationship. And here's the interesting thing about that is that I grew up with women pastors. And so wow. It was like, so you had men and women in that environment chasing that same thing from them as leaders.
Okay.
So yeah, it was
an authority thing. It was more okay.
Yes. Yeah, definitely more of an authority thing. And then that just translated then into okay, they're the head of God's house. And then when you get married, your husband's the head of your house. And so then, because I'm now used to that dogmatic style of brute force when it comes to submission, then of course, naturally found a husband that exemplified those types of elements of control to have over my life. Because I went from church controlling everything to then me, going into a marriage where he controlled everything and there was nothing abnormal about it.
Wow.
And so, and I'll condense the story and condense it to things because I've shared this. Kenyon is not my first husband. He's not my second husband. He is my third husband. So my first husband,
girl, one for the Father,
one for the Son, and one for the Holy Ghost. So my first husband was physically abusive and narcissistic, never wrong, never had accountability, beat me. I've, had been in the hospital. I've had busted lips. And I've gone to church and had church say, go home and please your husband. If you have sex, he'll treat you right. Then I got out of that and then got into another marriage with someone who was a church leader who basically, it's, you started talking about that narcissism, but it was like that covert narcissist where it was like, basically I had to rescue him from the woe is me damaging places that he was in life. And it became my mission and my purpose of that marriage to then rescue him out of there. Okay. And I think you talked about before, I'm listening to one of your earlier episodes where you talked about like the physical things being sometimes less damaging than the emotional stuff, because in that relationship, my silence was groomed. In that relationship, like my kids were in the same house as me and I couldn't really spend time with my kids. If there was things going wrong in the relationship, it was always my fault and always my responsibility to fix it. And everything I did to better and improve myself was taken as an insult to him because woe is me, and you've got to serve me. And so it was like, I went from like one bad relationship to the other. And like I started out with, it didn't really start with them. It started with my upbringing and my grooming to be controlled.
So let me ask you this. So, with the first marriage and after the second marriage, back up just a little bit. What was the final straw for the second marriage? What made you say, because it sounds like you jumped out of the frying pan into the pot, or out of the pot into the frying pan, whatever that phrase is.
Yeah, I forget what that one is, but yes, exactly that.
Was there sufficient space from let's say the first one to the second one? Did you have any therapy? What made you say the second time, enough is enough and I'm out, or whatever you said to leave?
Yeah. So there was a combination of things. I did start going to therapy. Now, of course, as a good wife, honey, let's go to therapy together. Let's do this. And the very first therapy session we had, I let him do all the talking and I'm like, nope, I don't want you to feel like I'm here to gang up on you. I'll let you do all the talking. Second therapy session we had, I did the talking. His session, this man went with a list of wrongs that I had committed throughout the entirety of the marriage. When I got there, I was just like, I didn't have the words to speak to what was going on in my life. And I told my therapist, like at the time I was starving and I'm dying here. And she tore into him. Like she was like, basically like she was a Christian counselor. She was a doctor at the time at Emory University. And, she basically really let him have it. And he left that therapy session and I was afraid because he was just like upset, punching the air, crying like I can't do nothing right. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go on my own. I'm going to go to therapy on my own and get myself stronger, because for one, I was still trying to figure out if I was crazy. Right. Like perhaps I'm doing something wrong. Like,
and that's the part right there. Stop right there, because I think what people don't understand is that I think even that's a lot of reasons why you don't ask for help. It's because you're still trying to figure out, okay, am I tripping? Like literally you're thinking about it. Maybe I am tripping. So thank God your counselor was able to see it, because a lot of times they're not. And especially if the husband is a narcissist or the person. And again, we're talking about women and men. So I'm going to refer to the men as the husband and the wife as the woman. So just to let you all know, but a lot of times that's missed because the husband is charming and he has the ability to be the nice guy or be the victim or whatever that is. And so it's missed a lot of times in counseling.
Yeah.
All right. So when you decided to leave, at that point, did you go to counseling first or you were in a relationship next?
I mean, for me, I had to be in counseling first because it was the situation for me. It was a situation where I needed to be mentally strong enough for what was coming next, because I knew it wasn't just leaving a marriage, it's leaving a church, it's leaving a position, an assignment.
Wow.
There was all sorts of things that were really, I knew like my house was about to crumble. And so I was in therapy for a good 3 months just by myself, just to get myself. At the time, I didn't call it this. Again, I just need you to tell me if I'm crazy. But with hindsight, it was to get me emotionally fit to deal with what was about to come next, because I was attacked in the public. I was berated by people who I loved and respected, and things like that. And so it really did take that. And I'll say there was a major event that happened where I had to travel for work, and I was very afraid to leave, but I had to travel for work. And I came home and I was told all sorts of cruel things that were done to my mother and my children while I was not there.
That were lies? Were those true or they?
Oh, no. My mother and my children told me, and I'm trying to be vague because for the most part, I try not to separate the two because, I still respect the people.
Right.
But my mom and my children told me something very specific that happened while I was gone, and I could not get to them. And I was like, you know what? And at the time I was starting a job that had me traveling, and I didn't ever want to continue to leave them vulnerable, and they had nobody else but me, and I'm thousands of miles away. So that was a decision. I was just like, I had to come to this point right here and say, you know what? That's it. I'm done.
Okay. So you left.
Mm-hmm.
And Kenyon, I'm going to bring you in because this is key, because what I want to ask you is, and I don't know, and I do know, but I don't know if you knew her when this was going on, initially as a friend, and then the relationship shifted and grew and all of that. But what was that like once you found out? Whenever you found out, what was it like to hear? Was she open about it all the way, or did you kind of was it in baby steps where you got the information that she was dealing with that?
To be honest, I think she was trying to be open about it. She just where she was at in life, she just didn't want to be no more. And she tried, I think it was at a place where what was wrong with me or something of that nature.
Yeah.
But my thing was what I was hearing was her ability to be a good woman, and how that was being perverted and distorted through the lack of a real man, and the lack of real leadership, and a lack of a real church, and a lack of real understanding. So when I began to hear those things, I began to put two and two together as we progressed, and I began to see where there were some things that could prohibit a relationship. There were things that could certainly she's a good person, right? But I saw that there were things, and we kept dialogue. We stayed open. One of the biggest things that we had to have was honest and open dialogue, because I was in a place, she was in a place. And if we weren't honest, nothing was going to go forward, because, somebody's sick and tired of being sick and tired. They're not going to wait till you get it right. They're not going to wait to see if you are going to be right. They're going to be at a place where they was like, well, I don't trust this. And so it was important for me to actually facilitate openness, to facilitate honesty, and to facilitate an opportunity to be healthy.
Okay.
And to be heard.
So I would imagine, and I know for myself, that it's difficult to share, right? So amongst people who have been abused, it's not difficult because you get it, right? When you want to be vulnerable again, there's a fear there because you're not sure how the person is going to take it.
Right.
So if you were to speak about from a man's perspective, and it's rare that we get them because I don't even like to give the platform, but I do want to ask you this. If you were to look back or to have a perspective about a person that is in a relationship and they may sense that the woman's been through something like that, or they're starting to share and they recognize that the woman has been like that. I don't even know how to ask this question, but I guess it's probably healthier, or at least from my perspective, to wait until you have built a level of trust and not necessarily you go out to dinner and you talk about that. Like there's got to be some kind of established trust. I don't know if there's a time frame. I don't want to put a number on a time frame, but what do you think is the best way from a person who had to receive that information? I mean, I think part of it is that you're intuitive and so you picked up on it, but from a person that's receiving that information, from a man that's receiving that information, how do you expect, or what would be your take on how to navigate through that?
Okay. Well, let's first set the rules. The rules for any relationship, especially with someone who's been abused, is their first and foremost rule is to stay safe.
Correct.
They've gotten safe, they've escaped, they've gotten delivered out of that situation. So now they have to be safe and stay safe. What that means is that she and her environment are priority. Number one, right? So what she's doing is she's assessing to see if he's safe enough. Right now, men may not know that. Men may come in, we're beguiled and we want to know her a little bit more, or whatever the case may be. What she does is she sets the tempo and tone. Hey, let's go a little bit slower, or hey, this is right here, and begin the process of talking. Conversation and communication is extremely important because it gives you the opportunity to see if they're willing to listen.
Gotcha.
So now you have a man who's willing to listen. He has to understand. You have to get to the point where a man understands where he is in this relationship, in the sense that I believe that a man needs to have her safety as priority, regardless of where he thinks regardless where he thinks she is or not, or where he thinks she's been through. He has to set himself up to be safe for her.
Yeah.
So that's even a separate mindset. Now, as that happens, all his job is to do is develop a safe space. That's it.
Okay.
I develop a safe space for, if I'm dating, I'm developing a safe space for who's there. I stay open. I stay honest. I say, this is where we're going. I make sure that she's safe. I continuously check on her ability, her security, if you will. During that part, that's when she gets the notion that maybe I can open up a little bit more. Maybe I could tell a little bit more of my story. Maybe I could tell a little bit more where I am. And he receives it. He doesn't respond to it in the sense that he has to do something about it. She's already done something about it. That's why she's gone.
Gotcha.
He receives it, but he stays in a position to maintain safety and security. Well, since you've been through this, am I going too fast? Since you've been through this, what can I do to be less threatening, if you will?
So there's compassion connected to that.
Absolutely. Compassion and empathy.
Empathy, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let me ask you this. So let's say he hasn't picked up on it.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't picked up on any of it. He's not asking any questions at initially, or even after they start dealing with each other for a little bit of time. And this is just my own estimation based on me and how I think.
Okay.
So if he does not ask questions, does that mean, well, there's no absolute. So I can't say if he doesn't ask questions, it doesn't mean that he doesn't care. It may just mean that he hasn't picked up on it. And I guess the better question would be, once you start to share, is he listening?
And I think, like you said, there's no absolutes. I think, as a woman, if you've been through abuse and you're now prepared to date again, because that's a whole nother process, like getting yourself ready to date again. But like, if you're prepared to date again, I think it's very important that you position yourself to be able to identify the characteristics that will not be able to handle who you are, where you've been, and what you're bringing to the table. And sometimes that does include my wounds and my scars. And so I would say for me with Kenyon, I recognized there was just a general care and concern. There was, asking about me, yes, but also just being able to just be a friend, being able to, have these open and honest dialogues.
Without the relationship piece,
and there was an ability to be a friend. And so you have to be able to discern if somebody is genuinely, going to be there for you. And that's not just from a abusive or narcissistic relationship perspective. That's any relationship. And so once you begin to discern if that person can be safe, secure, trustworthy, and show empathy towards you, then it's like, okay, now, then let's take this a step further. But it's, it's a bigger conversation, or it's a bigger, I guess, initiative to be able to, it's very layered as far as like, okay, I need to be able to see who this person is. And not only, unfortunately, it requires time, and it requires your ability to kind of withhold who you are a little bit until you see that they are going to be consistent in receiving you.
All right. So here's the question. So, and I have like all these things in my head, because what would you say, Taccara? Let you know, or would let someone know coming through that situation that you're ready to date? Stop, because there are times when you are out of the relationship, but it's not ready to date. And the reason why you start dating is because you're lonely, right? Mm-hmm. What would you say? What would you say would be, how can you let someone know that they're ready to date? How would you say, based on what you've been through, that you know, or that you knew that you were ready to date?
Okay, I'll start this, but I do want Kenyon to pick it up because he always has some good stuff to say about it. But I'll speak from something that we generally teach, right? Every relationship changes you. And whenever you leave that relationship, especially if it's abusive, you have escaped a traumatic event.
So there's residual.
There's a residual thing. And so one of the things, therapist that I follow, her name is Dr. Abrams. She says, trauma is identified by, number one, who you were before something happened and who you were after that incident happened to you. And we don't think about our relationship trauma in that same regard, but it's exactly that. And so a lot of times what typically happens, I have done it myself, you get out of these relationships, and because residually you still want the discomfort of that relationship because it was all you knew, but you want somebody as well. And so if I can't go back there, I'm going to then go back to what I think I left behind before that joker came into my life. Gotcha. So a lot of times we end up going back into an old relationship, an old boyfriend, old high school sweetheart, old lover, and try to recoup and rekindle who you were prior to that relationship. And the truth of the matter is, you're never going to be the same as you were before. And so what I advise all women to do is to spend a good amount of time getting to know who you are outside of that relationship, rediscovering who you are, rediscovering, what you've gone through, how it's changed you. What do I like today? Do I still like the same food? Do I have the same hobbies? Career-wise, do I want to change and shift and get to know you and get to love you and get to accept you after that point, and be able to create a safe space around yourself, within yourself, before you invite someone in there. Because as long as you're there, out there wounded, you're not going to have space for the right person to come into your life when you're ready.
That's good.
Absolutely. That's good. That's real good.
What happened, right, girl? You all right.
The thing with trauma, the things with going through these type things, and the thing with trauma is that it's somatic, meaning that it really does resonate with your body. It literally, like the car says, it really literally changes you. And because it changes you, it changes your habit, it changes your desires, it changes what you are used to. Now, a lot of people who leave, women who leave these situations, they hate the situation, but are used to the actions involved. And so I'm still used to being a wife. I'm still used to serving. I'm still used to giving. Who do I do this for? And so many women usually leave these situations and rescue someone else and and turn someone else into a project, or start feeding them and giving to them because they need that place they need someone to be their purpose.
Yeah.
Because this other person groomed her to be his purpose.
That's good.
Or groomed her so that he could be her purpose.
That's good.
And so she has to get to a place, again, like Taccara said, where she is not selfishly or self-centeredly important, but that she is important. Yeah. Who she becomes is important. Who she becomes for her children, who her children sees her to be, is important. Her interests, what are they? How important are they? How can she survive, not just monetarily, but how can she survive in life, or can she survive in life without anyone? Quiet is kept, and not saying that you have to have apathy towards love, or lose your desire for love, but that is not a necessity.
Yeah,
right. Quiet is kept between Taccara and I. When we got to the place where we were talking any which way, we both were like in two different states, and we was like, I ain't leaving. And whatever. It got to a place where we didn't need each other, so it freed us up to choose each other.
Gotcha.
And if you could choose someone without the pressure of feeling like you have to make that choice, now you're ready.
There you go.
All right. So stop. Sorry, I feel like a traffic cop, but
yeah, you're like moderator here.
So, Kenyon, what would you say is helpful for a man that's dealing with a woman who has suffered through traumatic experience? Whether you know about it or you're starting to sense that, where did you go for help, or where did you get the resources or the information, whatever you needed to assist you through this process? Did you have to go to counseling?
Like he went to school.
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, most men are not articulate emotionally, but they do care. So we want to keep that on the table, because some men care just by, well, let me go fix your car then, and we'll be all right. Stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Patience, love, kindness, compassion. We don't have to go any further than the word of God in order to create the disposition to love someone else in pain.
Yeah.
To love someone who has been broken. For me, I did go somewhere else. I have based upon a traumatic experience that I went through, I ended up just going straight to school. I was like, well, you know what? Education is my safe place. I'm gonna go there. And so I do have a background in theology and Christian counseling. Okay. And that allows me to actually see a little bit more, see a little bit further, and actually allows me to use my gift.
Okay.
But for men, patience. Listen, the thing for men is to understand that we can't fix everything, and to understand that because we can't fix it, that we're not powerless.
Okay.
That a power is a listening.
Yeah.
Listen, hear her, validate what you just heard by repeating it in your own words.
Yeah.
And just being there for her. Yeah. When you do that, you allow her to use you as a place to just kind of settle down.
That's good.
You see what I'm saying?
That's good.
And men have to do. Yes, ma'am.
No, I wanted you to finish your sentence.
Oh, no, I was there. Okay. Men have to do that.
Okay.
Can I say consistency? Because
yes.
It's a love language.
That adds to the piece of it all when you not you, but you as general, show up and continually show up with or without reward, because that's who you are, not what you're doing.
Yes. And that's a big piece of it is consistency. It is a love language. It is a superpower. Like, be consistent. That's like the name of the game. But I also think before Unfortunately, not every woman who has been through abuse is going to be very forthcoming up front that that is what she's been through. And so it will take time to be able to uncover that, with her in that relationship or as they're in the dating process. But I would say, men and women alike have to recognize if someone may not be equipped to handle that, because there are men who have tried to love women who have been through abuse, and I've seen it happen with my own two eyes. Be like, well, you ain't just gonna be treating me like I'm the dude that hurt you, so I'm out of here. And it became a situation where instead of him saying I can't handle it, he then became almost brutal against her and re-injured her in that process.
Gotcha.
And so it's like, listen, recognize, it's like dealing with somebody with mental health issues. Recognize up front if that's something that you are equipped to handle, because I think there's no shame in saying, you know what, this is going to be a little bit too much, Ray, and I might have to push back from the table. Doesn't mean you're a bad person. There's nothing wrong with you. I just don't have what I need in order to care for this.
That's good.
And so, yeah, that's all I was going to say.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
good. You gotta be open to that. It's like marrying someone with PTSD. It's really CPTSD, really. But it's like marrying someone with PTSD, and you got to understand that this is what comes with them. So you have to be gentle in certain areas that they may be sensitive in.
Mm-hmm. And I think, like what I often think about, and even if, through trauma, again, we're talking about open, honest conversation, right? Between two people that have intentionally decided that they're going to communicate, because I think communication is intentional. But what I will say is that in that conversation, I feel like if you are intentional about having that conversation, you're intentional about communicating, it kind of levels the platform so that the person can at least feel open enough to share. But also, like you said, recognize your capacity. And so if this is too much, that doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. But if I see, it could be too much, but if I see that the person is genuinely doing the work,
correct,
it helps me to understand and say, perhaps I can walk this out with them. But the key phrase is consistently doing the work, right? Because it takes a lot of work to recover from any abusive situation, but certainly a narcissistic abusive situation is way more traumatic. There are things in our minds after dealing with the narcissist, and Kenyon, you may not have to say anything. There's still things that we replay in our minds without you saying anything because of the way that we were conditioned.
And the bigger thing, because both of us have dealt with people with certain types of personalities. And so I think, for us, communication, like Kenyon started off earlier, he started off communicating like, okay, listen, he's told me what some of his fears are because of previous relationships. And so he basically stated, like, I have a thing where I shut down when I get upset. And it's one of two things. Either I'm just upset and F you, or it's I'm upset or it's a trauma response to not making sure that I don't do anything else to make anybody else mad around me. And I pull back and I get quiet and I shut down and I go away. And this is me hiding and removing myself from the situation. Because in my past, either I got hit for it, or if I kept on, if I stayed in the way, there was a fight and I got hit for it, or if I'm in that environment, then they try to find reasons to pick fights with me and beat me down verbally. And so, like, there are one or two ways. And so, like, he just plainly had to come to me and say, listen, when you do this, it makes me feel like this. Like, you get into this place and you do this, this, and this, and this is how it makes me feel because of his past trauma. Right. And so, like, once he did that, I'm like, okay, well, dang, now I have to, flip myself around and actually be able to be more sensitive. I have to be sensitive to him. He's got to be sensitive to me. But once that happened, it allowed both of us to really sit down and continue to have these conversations. Again, Kenyon, he speaks a lot more than most men about these things, but it still helped that he was able to be vulnerable. He knows that there are things today that I still will not do in front of him because somebody in my past told me these things were disgusting about me.
Right.
And so he knows that. I don't really share it with him all the time, but he knows that there are certain things that, like, and so he's made it a point to be like, baby, I need you to be all of you. Go ahead, take that wig off. Girl, I don't care if you ain't got no hair on. Like, do whatever you need to do to make you feel like you. And I think as long as a man makes the intentional effort to not just hear her past, but be different from her past, I think that's where the change is made.
That's good. That's really good. And create the safe space for you to be who you are. I have a girlfriend that never used the bathroom in front of her husband.
Oh, I still haven't passed gas in front of Kenyon. Like, I won't.
So listen, she would use the bathroom number 1, but when she had to do number 2, and look, just so happened her parents lived down the street, she would leave and go over to their house, use the bathroom, and come back home. The problem was when she had to go at 1 a.m. He was like, okay, what is she doing? What? He wouldn't say anything, but for years, years. And it's so interesting because there are things that we have in our minds as expectations or what we think, how we think another person is going to respond. You have nothing to do with it. Kenyon has nothing to do with it. It's in your mind. You don't even know that you've been functioning in the dysfunction all this time. And so when things happen, if he has created a safe space, then when he asks you, what are you doing? You don't feel like, you looking at me? Why are you looking at me? You know what I mean? You can answer and say whatever you say. You might be scared to say or whatever. And he can say, baby, it's safe. You can use the bathroom at home. Like,
we've had many of those conversations over the years that we've been married.
Yeah.
Many. Yeah.
Yeah. It does take compassion, Kenyon. I appreciate the fact that you loved on my girl, because I knew before this was crazy.
Yeah.
This was crazy. And it's so hard because especially when you have children and you are a single mom and you're trying to navigate through that, right? And you're trying to do everything right. You don't even realize that's what you're doing, but there's a lot of pressure on trying to do everything right. Once you've come out of an abusive situation or self-worth has gone, you're trying to do everything right. You're trying to fix it. And you don't even realize that's what you're doing. So I have to say, I appreciate you, Taccara, first of all, for coming through and being the strong Shira that you are. But I appreciate you, Kenyon, for loving her back into the fold and utilizing your probably every single nerve in your body, including your wit, to bring her into a safe space. Because I know that it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work for us to get to the place to share. So it's got to be a lot of work for the person that's waiting for us to get to that space, right?
Yes. That's absolutely right.
Yeah, well, it's it's hard to say it's work when you love somebody, you know what I mean?
Right.
Don't have to try that. I mean, it's not effortless. Don't get me wrong, but it's one of those things that, I when I chose her, I chose that, and so I had to be aware of what I chose.
That's where the intentionality comes in, though.
Yeah.
Amen.
You both were intentional about that. So
absolutely,
thank you. Thank you so much, both of you, for coming on and sharing with us tonight. I'm going to pull you out of the room for just a moment and have my closing remarks, and I'll be right back.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Thank you again. Thank you all so much for listening tonight. Thank you for coming and sharing. Those of you who shared your comments tonight, we certainly want you to continue the conversation. We want to continue the conversation about domestic violence where we can create a safe space to share, right? So certainly reach out to us. Our Instagram, we're at Another Woman's Story on Instagram. Those of you who chimed into our Facebook page, Another Woman's Story. We have our email is anotherwomanstory@gmail.com. Feel free to give us a call. Go to our website, which is anotherwomanstory.com. And please continue the conversation. We have one more week of podcasts in our month of podcasts, and we are going to have a whole lot of people online. We're going to go out with a bang. So if you would please make sure that you follow us on our Facebook page so that you can get your reminder. Please, as always, we want to reiterate, if you are currently in a situation, if you are currently in danger, if you need someone to talk to. And again, this number is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Please call the domestic violence hotline at 799-SAFE, 1-800-799-SAFE. As always, we want to wish you a great evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Feel free to share this on your pages and with everyone you know. Thank you for a lovely evening. Love you guys. Take care. Have a great night. Bye-bye.